So, if we cast our mind back to when Nintendo changed their, I think it was their EULA, the end user license agreement or something along those lines, but basically what's kind of been happening at this point is that somehow Nintendo is able to brick your console if you're using it for reasons that they deem to be not okay. For example, there's something called the MIG switch, basically a Switch cartridge that you can use to dump all of your Switch games, so that all you have to do is put one cartridge into your console and you'll have access to your entire library just in a more convenient fashion. Using something like that will get your Switch 2 bricked, which is what's been happening to other people. So, let's look at what governments can do to protect their basically their citizens from being, constantly harassed by companies basically from other overseas. Brazilian agency formally notifies Nintendo of a console bricking EULA clause. So, Nintendo's end user license agreement tied to the Nintendo Switch 2 console has been deemed as abusive by Brazilian Consumer Protection Agency, and it's probably worth keeping in mind, but I feel like Brazil has like a very nice group of individuals that kind of try to actually look after their people, which is kind of cool to some extent. But I mean, I'm just kind of looking at it from outside. I'm sure there are bigger problems in the actual country itself than consumer rights in that sense. But moving on from that, so basically they said it's abusive for Nintendo to say, hey, we can disable the Switch 2 units of users who Nintendo has found to have violated the contract. The agency has put the company on official notice over its Nintendo Switch 2 policies, which it claims violate Brazilian's consumer protection laws. Following the console's worldwide launch on June 5th, sales of the Nintendo Switch 2 broke historic records, nearly tripling the day one sales of the PS4 units set in 2013, according to insider estimates. Exact sale figures related specifically to Brazil are unclear, but demand obviously has been high, as units sold out 2 days ahead of the console's launch, as reported by Nintendo Soup. While the popularity of the Nintendo Switch 2 is evident in Brazil, some of the provisions for its end-user license agreement has caught the attention of Procon SP, the São Paulo-based branch of Brazil's Consumer Protection and Defense Program. That's interesting, defense program. As pointed out by Technoblog, Nintendo maintaining the ability to terminate user accounts to render its console permanently inoperable without a valid reason is violation against the nation's Consumer Protection Code. So I suppose it's probably fair to say that, hey, if you're going to be selling something in Brazil, you can't just give a blanket statement saying, hey, you know this electronic that you brought? Yeah, we're going to shut it down the moment we have a suspicion, an inkling that you used it for something that is not deemed okay. And remember how I said at the beginning of this video, a MIG switch is also considered a thing that Nintendo does not like, and therefore will shut down your Switch for that particular reason. You're making the use of their product more beneficial for yourself, but Nintendo's like, no, you want to make life easier for yourself? Get bent, basically. But yeah, so this Consumer Protection Code basically says, and I assume, so this is the quote basically, seeks to meet consumer needs to respect their dignity, health and safety, to protect their economic interests, to improve their quality of life, and to ensure transparency and harmony in consumer relations. So yeah, that seems to be pretty... well, it's vague enough to where at least you kind of know what they're referring to. And it looks like this isn't also the first time that Procon SP has actually had some bouts against Nintendo in that sense. Nintendo has maintained that the provisions in question were added a month before the Switch 2's launch, were put in place as anti-piracy measures. Interesting. But then the question becomes, what about people who buy their games physical, dump them onto a MIG switch, and then play it that way? they are lumped in with other people who might not necessarily do that. Just something worth thinking about, because again, the mix switch example is one that we can at least verify actually is happening in terms of bricking Nintendo Switch 2s. Which, keeping in mind, if a Nintendo Switch 2 does get bricked, basically the person who bought it could potentially return it or sell it on a secondary market. But the problem then becomes, well, you won't be able to make it work or function again. At least there's no known way in which people can make it work, as far as I could tell. And I don't think there has been any reports of a Switch getting bricked and then getting unbricked by Nintendo in some way, shape, or form. It'll be interesting to see how all of this basically kind of shakes up. And the fact that the Switch has only been out for, a month and a half, and the fact that even then many people are talking about, bricked Nintendo Switches and things like that, really will go to show just how many people this is going to be affecting in the long run. But yeah, so Nintendo Warren players could brick their Switch and Switch 2 consoles. The Switch 1 as well could brick their Switch or Switch 2 consoles. Yeah, if unauthorized modding had been detected and the nondescript language used in the EULA was likely put in place as a catch-all that could avoid technical loopholes that potential pirates could use to sidestep any specific regulations. Honestly, for this change alone, pirating Nintendo games will never be morally disagreed upon. I think everyone could universally come together and be like, well, except Nintendo fans, of course, and say that Nintendo games should be specifically targeted because of all of the stuff that they're doing. However successful people may be, well, we won't know until it happens, when finally we'll actually be able to get ROMs and emulators all sorted out. But yeah, so the official notification has reportedly been sent to Nintendo on the 26th of June, and reports state that Nintendo has agreed to officially respond to Procon SP's legal concerns within 20 days of that date. Meanwhile, the license agreement language has caused other problems in the used console market. Oh yeah, because of course, if you brick a Switch 2 and you sell it on the used console market, obviously you're more likely to get a bricked Switch 2 than a proper Switch 2. Meanwhile, the license agreement, I've already read that, as customers have been warned against buying a used Switch 2 due to the possibility of Nintendo having already rendered them permanently inoperable. And this is also something I really want to touch upon, is that we do not want this thing to continue happening to consoles moving forward into the future. If, for whatever reason, Sony releases a console, they also can brick themselves if they ever feel like it's being used for purposes beyond which they intended to put it out there, then of course it's just not gonna fly, I think, with a lot of people. Because if Nintendo is having this many issues with it, I can't imagine what other places are going to be like. But with all of that being said, however, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. And with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.